Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I'll be analysing and reviewing games using the mindset of speedrunning. This video will look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people will first play the game. This will look like a condensed standard review. Next, we'll discuss the speedrun experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. Finally, we'll look at the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description. Today we're looking at Wonder Boy in Monster World, which is the third game in the Monster Boy series and the fifth game in the Wonder Boy series, and it's just so confusing. It's important to note that this is different to Wonder Boy in Monster Land, and this game was also released on the Genesis. We're going to be looking at the Master System version today. Before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date. I'm hoping to continue making these videos, and subscriptions help out the channel a bunch. So if you're familiar with the Wonder Boy games or the Monster Boy series, you'll know this game plays pretty much how you'd expect. It doesn't have the transformations like Wonder Boy 3 did, it's just a standard platformer and sword slasher kind of game. You grind, you get power-ups, you get upgrades, you explore. It's pretty good. Although it doesn't have the character transformations, puzzle solving, and those exploration-y power-up bits that Wonder Boy 3 had, it does have some really cool theming and some really cool parts to it. In fact, it may even be my favourite Wonder Boy game. One cool bit, for example, is this ocarina section, where you have to get a particular password and play the ocarina to get through the door. Much like the other Monster Boy games, you're going to be able to get heart power-ups and level yourself up, as well as getting armor and shields and swords and everything. Also with the magic you can equip, that gives you a little bit of extra attacking power. You eventually make your way through to Purple Castle, which is sort of the heart of the game, and you branch out from there. It's often pretty fun to figure out where the next place to go is, and really cool when you can actually make it to a new area. The Master System version is a very scaled down version of what the Genesis is. More often than not, big sections in the Genesis version were cut down to single rooms in the Master System version. But I actually kind of like that it's a shorter experience here, and the Master System version is a little bit easier, which is nicer to deal with. Genesis version, while it is fun, can be very difficult, particularly with the final boss, so it can be a bit frustrating if you're trying to play through that. There's something just very chill about the whole game. It almost reminds me of like a liminal space or something. I remember picking this up from Game Traders back in the day and bringing it home. Wasn't really expecting a whole bunch out of it, but just playing it very late into the early hours of the morning essentially, finding all these cool little corners of the game like the Snow World, for example. And then one thing that I just really like about the game is that it just gives names to all the bosses. So you'll come in and it comes in and says the Ice Bomber, for example. It's really cool. I think something that adds to this liminal space sort of feeling of the game is that the Genesis version was a lot bigger and everything was explained a bit more in the Genesis version. In the Master System version they've cut it down and assumed you still know all that context. So it's a really weird feeling to be familiar with the Master System version and just not have context for anything, and then jump to the Genesis version where there's a lot more story and exposition. There's this whole really cool theming about the legendary equipment. Now the legendary equipment's been in the other Wonder Boy games, but in this game it takes a step up because you actually use a legendary sword to get up to the sky and go to the final area of the game. So overall I would really recommend this game along with all the other games in the Wonder Boy series. Wonder Boy 3 is probably going to be the easiest one to pick up and stick your teeth into, but this one is definitely worth trying as well, especially if you like action RPGs. Just a heads up that the speedrunning section will unavoidably have some spoilers in it. I'll try and keep everything pretty much chronological, so the end of the game should fall towards the end of the speedrunning section. So now let's move on to looking at the speedrun. We're not going to be looking at the Genesis version today, that might be something for another video. Instead we're going to be looking at the Master System run, and we'll be looking at Berlin Dude's world record. Berlin Dude's pretty well known for grinding down the Wonder Boy series, and this is no exception. Berlin Dude has the record here. Okay, let's make a start. So Berlin Dude's going to be walking through this first area, and the first thing you'll notice is the coin spawning from the secret spots. So you'll need lots of gold to buy various things in this game, and by going to secret spots you can get that to spawn, just like what he's done there. Little quick note about versions, he is playing on the NTSC version of this game. Wonder Boy wasn't released in Japan or America, but this game was released in South Korea, so you can justify playing it on 60Hz for that reason. Makes the game go a little bit quicker than the European release. One thing he's been grinding for are these boots. So the boots actually do increase your movement speed when you're wearing them, so they're definitely worth getting. Berlin Dude gets the ocarina and immediately plays it here. Since the code is the same every time, he just remembers the code and doesn't actually have to go back to the town to learn the code. He beats the first boss and heads off to the next area. Next, he's continuing on with the intended path through the game, just going through this section here. When he gets to the end of the forest, he sort of saves this dude and brings him back to town. That's another thing that's very different in the Genesis version, but this is going to unlock the next dungeon area of the game. At the end of the dungeon, he's coming across Grag and Glag. Now you can see he's using a lot of magic, so he was using the shield just then to avoid taking damage, and he's going to swap to the power magic here. Magic is quite useful in this game. So the power magic will just make killing these a little bit easier. Next we have this really big section getting the desert boots. So Berlin Dude's got to swim underwater here, get the mermaid's tears, and then go and actually get those boots. He then comes to this guy, and now he's actually got the boots to cross the desert. So the issue with crossing the desert normally is that you do take damage as you go and cross it if you're not wearing the boots, but now the Berlin Dude's got those boots, he can actually make it across the desert. Now Berlin Dude's going to head back out and actually take an intentional death warp to get back to town. So that's part of the routing in this game. When you die you go back to whatever the last inn was that you stayed at, so he's actually heading back to that inn now, which saves a whole bunch of time navigating back to town. Now one thing that he could do at this point is go through the desert, because he actually does have the desert boots to make it through there, but that's not what he's going to do. He's actually going to head towards this ice area which we shouldn't be able to access yet. In the ice area, he's going to jump up on that wall there. When you jump up on a wall, you can sort of gain a little bit of extra height and do a little clip thing, and you can actually jump over that barrier there. You're supposed to break that barrier to get through here, but with that little jump glitch, you can actually make it straight up. Berlin Dude's stopping to grind some money, and this actually is casually an excellent place in the game to grind money too. The reason that he's done that is just to buy more shoes in this town, because the shoes do make you move faster, so they're definitely worth getting here. He comes up to this ice bomber enemy and uses the power magic again to kill it pretty quickly. Next he's going to head back to town and actually use the desert boots to cross the desert now. So you need to go to ice and desert area to beat the game, so that's why he's doing the desert now. At the end of the desert is this pyramid thing. There is this little skip that you can do if you jump onto those platforms, and you can make it through to the next little area without having to go all the way to the top, but he's not going for it here. The skip is pretty tricky to do, that's probably why. And once he gets to the top here, he's just going to make his way down through the rest of the pyramid. At the end of the pyramid, he's going to get the Tyrant Dragon boss, which is another one you need to beat to get towards the end of the game. He's going to exit the pyramid here. I really like this platform for some reason. It reminds me of like Sonic & Knuckles or Chrono Trigger or something. Really cool. We're going to make our way through to the next town here, and you get to this town sort of after doing the pyramid. Now you're supposed to do a whole bunch of awkward jumps over these boulders, but he's going to use the shield magic, which gives you invincibility to get across. A pretty smart move in all honesty. Now in this town you normally have to have the ice boss beaten and that Tyrant Dragon boss beaten. If you do that, then you should be able to go and talk to these guys, who will eventually give you the legendary sword after a whole bunch of dialogue. So he's going to make his way down there and talk to this one. And once again, we're going to go back to that first blacksmith and get the legendary sword there. So the legendary sword is sort of the big bottleneck of the run. You need to beat those bosses to get it, and then we're going to go back to the main town with the legendary sword. If you have the legendary sword equipped, you can just stand under that bell there and warp straight up to the final castle. So now he's in the end part of the game. The end part of the game here has some pretty tricky platforming sections. For example, this bit here, especially with the enemies flying around, it can be quite difficult not to fall down. So it's very impressive what he's doing through this section. We're fighting the almighty Demon King, which surprisingly is not the final boss. And this is where the game takes a very strange turn. After you beat this boss, you actually end up going to space, of all places. It's pretty weird. So Wonder Boy games seem to have a little trend of just turning all technological towards the end, and in this one you go towards space. So there you go. You get a lovely little cutscene for going to space, and then this is actually the final area of the game. Berlin Dude's going to do his 2 refights with the Snow Dude and the Tyrant Dragon. So Berlin Dude's going to head into the final boss now, and it's a fairly easy one. You just hit it in the eye a few times and then you've won. So that's pretty much it for this run. It's a pretty interesting run and very impressive skill level wise. These bosses are not easy to beat, but there aren't too many glitches. There's a thing to get into the ice area, which is just a bit quicker than going through the desert first. But yeah, that's pretty much what the run is, and it's a pretty enjoyable speedrun. I'll also mention that there are a lot of glitches in this game, it's just that not many are overly useful for the run. So the TAS we're looking at is my 1824 today. And you'll notice immediately we have the Korean title screen, and that's because I have to play this in NTSC. Korean was the only NTSC release of this game. One other strange thing about this TAS is that there's pretty much no music throughout the whole thing, and that's due to a glitch with screen transitions. So if you jump on the frame where you're transitioning to a new screen, it'll cancel the music and it will actually save yourself a little bit of lag. So it saves about a frame every time you do it, which means the entire TAS is silent. But when I made this TAS, I made an encode of it which edits all of the music back in, because it would be pretty unentertaining to watch a silent TAS. Now the RTA run was pretty standard, but the TAS has some really cool tech pretty much everywhere. You'll notice that there's corner boosts. Whenever I jump onto a corner, the character sort of zips forward. And that is sort of an intentional TAS tactic, and that happens when you jump and just barely land on a corner. I don't know why it works, but pretty much every time you see a ledge like that, I'm gonna be saving time by jumping across it. TAS will still have to do all the usual stuff like grinding out gold for boots, but then we're gonna make it to our first town here. We go through this first area with the ocarina and it all plays pretty much normally. So I've got the fire magic here and I'm going to be using that to kill the mushroom pretty quickly. And that's what this will look like. Now the real interesting part about this TAS is that it's 10 minutes faster than the RTA run, and you might be wondering why. Well, you'll get your first clue here when the route diverges. Normally RTA would go to Purple Castle and do that forest area and then do that underwater area to get the desert boots. But I'm going to go here straight away and do the ice area. On its own, this isn't too interesting because you could do this RTA if you want. The reason RTA runners don't do the ice area right now is because they're a bit more powered up with better upgrades like swords and boots and stuff at the point where they normally do the ice area. But I'm going to do it here right now. I'll eventually fight the ice bomber and make our way through, and that brings us to the end of the ice area. Since we haven't been to an inn in town yet, we can't just walk back there, so you actually have to clip back out of the ice area. It's a bit of a weird one. And we're just about to make it to Purple Castle. So what you're probably expecting is that I go down to that forest area and do the whole 10-minute side quest to get the desert boots. Unless we just go to the desert straight away. So normally you'd be taking damage very gradually through this desert, and you'll actually see me take a bit of damage here. And the reason for that is because the desert's really hot and you need the special boots to make it through. But what if I told you that the damage only happens on particular frames, and if you happen to be paused on those frames, you're not going to take the damage. So that's what you can pretty much do. By keeping on pausing and unpausing as you go through the desert, if you do time it right, you'll actually skip over those frames where you'd normally be getting damaged, and then you just don't take any damage. You'll notice that I'm still going through the desert pretty much normally and not pausing too much until I do actually run out of hearts. So the reason I'm not pausing heaps is because obviously pausing takes a lot of time. So I do want to still take some damage from the desert, just in the sense that if I tried to avoid all the damage, I'd spend pretty much all my time pausing and not really get anywhere. But I'm gradually planning it out so that by the time I get to the end of the desert, I'll have basically no health left. And I could keep more health, but that would just mean more pausing, which would be slow. So this one glitch with the desert pausing saves so much time over the run. It saves doing the entire forest section, and also the entire underwater section where you get the desert boots. And that's what helps the TAS be 10 minutes faster than RTA. You do lose some of that time through the pausing. The pausing takes a couple minutes to do since you have to keep slowing down and pausing and unpausing, but it's definitely worth it to save visiting those other two areas. You'll see I've got basically no health now at this point, and that's why I have to keep pausing towards the end of the desert. But now that we've made that, we're in through to the pyramid. So we're in the pyramid here, and as I said before, there's this little skip that you can do by just jumping out into that section. This is the other very big time saver over the RTA run. I'm not sure how difficult this is to do outside of a TAS setting, but I suspect that it's one of the things that could be incorporated into RTA that could save a whole bunch of time. And then we're just going to come through to this Tyrant Dragon boss and beat that, because we still do need to beat that Dragon boss and Ice boss to beat the game. Now since I'm quite a bit weaker than the RTA run, you'll notice these bosses do take a bit longer, but I'm trying to use that Fireball magic to speed it up a bit. The RTA run has a better sword and also that power magic which helps it beat the bosses super quickly. You do actually have to wait for all the money to fall down before you can go through a door, so it actually works out quite well that you don't have to make that trade-off of do I or do I not grind for money. You basically just always have to. We get the Sacred Flame there, which is normally used to melt the ice and get into the ice area. We're going to go through this exact same sequence as before to get the Legendary Sword and then head back to town. Note that we actually haven't been in town yet. Overall, there's not too much to say about this last area apart from a bunch of corner boosting, except for this one section here that I really love. Check out this huge jump up the wall here. So what's happening there is whenever you clip inside of a wall, you can actually jump off of it. I guess the game just thinks you're grounded because your feet are technically touching the wall. So it's very similar to the way that the skip works to get into the ice area. Although with the ice area skip, you're just doing one jump, whereas with that skip there, you're doing a whole bunch of jumps. That's definitely not RTA viable, but it saves a whole bunch of time over actually climbing the rope. We go up to space and then finish off with this final boss here, and that's the TAS. So I was really pleased when I made the TAS because of that desert skip. I actually didn't know that it was a thing before I came in and made the TAS, so pretty interesting to see. I was really impressed that the TAS was able to save 10 minutes over RTA, but a lot of this time save did come from that desert skip. I don't see RTA runners really doing the desert skip. They can time the pauses definitely, but it would be really hard to know exactly when those frames are that you're going to take damage, and it would probably take more time than it was worth if you actually did make it through it all. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for watching.